Hello everyone, welcome to another LifeCast. I am just aware we have a new bartender. Can we get 2 beers, please? Yes. And I'm also aware that it is your topic this week.
It is. This week I thought the visualisation one, obviously I'm quite passionate about it. You was probably less so, which I think is good. But I think that one was quite polarising, a topic. This one, this week, I think is probably something that affects us all if we've got kids. And it's definitely affected me now, almost daily for 16 and a half years. Thank you, Adam. It's parent guilt. So, how old's your little one? 8?
She's 8.
What kind of, what thoughts have you had around that?
I think parent guilt is possibly something that affects me every single day, more than anything else. I know in previous episodes we spoke about visualisation, and even other topics that we've said we're going to speak about and stuff. Parent guilt is probably the one that gets to me the most because I feel it in so many different ways, and it's so funny. Social media can be so it can make your life look out to be a certain way, and I post photos with my daughter all the time, and people must think, oh well, he must back himself as a decent. Exactly, yeah. But inside, it's something that it really can get to me. Initially, when I think about parent guilt, I would have assumed that people think it's probably you either work too hard and never see your kids, or you don't work hard enough and you can't provide. Whereas for me, it's probably a little bit of that as well. But I get guilty over the fact that I'm not with my little girl's mum anymore. I broke up that family. I get parent guilt over...
Well, let's take that one. Why does that make you feel guilty?
Well, I was lucky enough. I grew up, I had a mum and dad who were in the same house together, and until my mum passed away, for 12 years, I just had a normal mum and dad there together. My daughter's now grown up with a mum and a dad in a separate house, and that absolutely pains me. And don't get me wrong, I get on really well with her mum. We're great friends and we help each other out. But knowing the fact that my little girl has to spend 3 nights a week in her mum's, 3 or 4 nights a week at mine, and vice versa, all because of decisions that essentially I've made. She's got nothing to do with that. And now she has to split her time. In years to come, she's potentially going to have to split Christmases. Or I'll spend the morning of Christmas with my dad, I'll have to spend the afternoon with my mum. That weighs heavy on my heart, though.
What do you think what's the downside of having a dad in one house and a loving dad in one house and a loving mum in another house?
I just think that I probably overthink maybe that feelings that she maybe feels. That, you know, she's thinking, oh, I need to see my mum because I haven't seen her for a couple of nights, or I need to see my dad, I've not seen him. And these are all feelings that my little girl may feel because of decisions that I've made, or maybe me and her mum, if you like, together.
And she's 8 now. Has she ever said anything to you?
No, she hasn't. No. But it'd be interesting to know, because I know you've got a 16-year-old in similar situation.
Yeah.
Did you not ever feel that at the time as well?
I think we all have an ideology, don't we, about what we want to do when we want to be a parent. Now, you had your start to life was, as you said, in a happy family of mum and dad. Well, mine wasn't. So I had the opposite of you, but I wanted the same. So it was, well, I haven't had it, so I want to make sure my son gets it. So there was a period of time, we split up when Ethan was 2, so it was early on.
Similar to when I split with Alva's mum.
And I had in my head before that happened, we absolutely must. I absolutely must live as a family unit, because I never had that. I had it subsequently with my stepdad, who is my dad, but I didn't have it at the start in my starting position. So for me, it was, again, I think I was trying to dig at questions there, really, because I think there'll be a lot of people listening to this podcast or watching the podcast, and they'll think we all make up these ideologies. And you wanted the same thing from a totally different, and we'll come on to this in a second, but you wanted a family unit from a different perspective, and I wanted a family unit from a different perspective. And anyway, it didn't work out. Yours didn't work out. I've subsequently got 3 kids, as you know, with my current missus, and I wouldn't think, having seen the 4 of them grow up, that there is any detriment to Ethan growing up in two homes.
I remember though when it was one of the things that really killed me. It's like because we split up when she was so young. I think, and listen, that's what's the funny thing about guilt. You know, it affects people in different ways. Alba probably wouldn't be bothered because yes, she has got 2 loving homes. But what used to rack me with guilt is I think we've not got this like amazing family Christmas photo.
Yeah.
You know, she can never look back and go, that was, you know, because we're all together and that. And to be fair, you know, we do still have photos, me, her and the mum, the first day of school, for example, and stuff. But they're just all these things that I've overplayed in my head, and it does rack me with guilt to the point where, you know, now even when she's with me, I feel guilty that she's not with her mum. Even though I'm buzzing that she's with me, I feel really sly that I've kind of, it's been me that's broke up that family dynamic, and that's something that sits with me every day and really sits heavy.
Yeah, and I think it's that invention, isn't it? It's you inventing that, really.
Yeah.
If I looked at your daughter's never said anything and never shown any signs. That's a fact. Second of all, you know, if you look at what you do with the quality of time that you have, I feel like actually the guilt that you might have plays itself out to make sure that while you're there, she gets the best of you.
Yeah.
I'm saying she does all the time. Another topic we'll probably talk about with guilt in a second. But you feel like you've got your kid now. What is it? With Ethan, it was like, what does he like? Basketball. I'll take him basketball. Harlem Globetrotters here. Must take him. What does he like? WWE. Must take him to WWE. I think if you're in a relationship, and I'm guessing, you know, Alba's mum does the same, so she gets the best of both worlds to some degree. But it's funny how as parents, you don't ever look at it from that perspective.
No.
And you don't even look at it from your kid's perspective. Because if you'd have said to me then, yeah, but Alba really misses, she's said to me, why am I at Christmas Day? I have to do this. Or I really miss a family holiday. Or where's my photo in Disney World with mum? But she actually hasn't. So in a way, it's kind of us as the parents and as the adults that kind of invent or overthink, overplay this idealistic, romantic scenario, and then we feel bad about not delivering it.
Another one on that, which is another big guilt I sit with, which is exactly what you've just said then. Alba would never complain about this. Maybe she might in the future, I don't know, but a guilt which, again, sits really heavy for me is I feel guilty about money I've spent, things I've wasted money on, for example, I don't know, lads' holidays, and, you know, I went to Vegas with my dad, you know, spunked a few grand and had a great time with my dad. But I weirdly, maybe it's not weird, I don't know, but I think I could have had that money and got Alba a better education. I could have moved area to another house and then in a better catchment area for a better school. She would have had a better education if I'd been more wise with my money, if I'd done this and done that. And she loves her school and she loves her friends, but again, I have a parent guilt over thinking, am I giving her the best start in life? You know, could I have offered her something else? And then I look at my own life and going, well, why couldn't I have done that? Well, because you've done X, Y, and Z. And then I feel guilty about doing that.
And that's so funny you say that, because I think I've had fleeting moments of that, only fleeting. And I think it depends what your objective is as a parent. You know, we talked in the very first one about goals and objectives and setting them. And I think when you become a parent, you probably don't ever take a step back and think, what's my objective or role as a parent? And I've never wrote this down, but in the back of my head, I've always thought, my objective is to be a role model to my kids. And I think you become a role model by experience. I think you become a role model by what your character becomes, what your personality becomes. And I think, and this might be me just justifying all my trips away, but I honestly think that every time I've had a fleeting moment of being in Vegas or wherever it is, thinking, I could be with my kids or I could be spending this money on such a thing, I actually think what I am doing is I'm self-developing myself. And that sometimes is in a serious moment, but sometimes it's in a holiday moment where you go into a place and you're becoming more you're broadening your horizons, which we've also talked about on these podcasts, right? And I think you're going to be a better role model to your kids if that's your objective. If you're having fun, being social, seeing the world, doing things you enjoy, I think if you do all them, you're probably going to be a more well-rounded individual in the long term. And therefore, for me, my objective is to be a role model.
That's 100% true. I mean, I'd want my daughter to look up and think, wow, my dad's travelled here, there and everywhere, take inspiration from that and want to live a similar lifestyle. So 100% get that. But it's funny, isn't it? Because they're the two big guilts that sit heavy with me. And obviously you've felt both of them already. When you speak about guilt, I initially thought that the whole thing would be you'd either work too hard and you never see your kids, or you don't probably work hard enough and can't provide a decent life for them. People would feel guilty about. But actually, when you just straight away you start thinking about it, you realise that there's so many other things you can feel guilty of. But then actually, when you speak to someone else, they can go, actually, you know what, you're being a bit hard on yourself there.
Yeah. Well, irrational, isn't it? It's irrational. It would be perfectly rational if all the things you just brought up a minute ago, your daughter had said to you. The reality of it is you just made them up. Go on.
What are your big ones? Because they're my two.
You see, that's the thing, isn't it? What between me and you now? So if I didn't have enough money to buy the Nike trainers, I would feel guilty about buying the Nike trainers. So I have enough money to buy a pair of Nike trainers, so I think, I can't feel guilty about that then. So you just move the goalpost of guilt, don't you, right? So with me, of course, what's it going to be? It's like I'm working constantly. So there's two parts to that. One is the time spent away from the kids.
Does that bother you, does it?
It's bothered me more. It bothered me more when I was younger. And I'll be dead straight with you now. The World Cup was on. And not that David Beckham was playing in the World Cup. And I remember seeing all the things with him and Victoria. And he looks like he's a good dad to me, you know. I don't know whether he looks like he is. They look like they're good parents. So I used to respect him as, you know, as the work he puts in, And part of the respect I had for him was, God, he looks like he's been with the same girl for like 20, 30 years. I kind of respect that, right? And he's a good parent. But then he has to go away for 8 weeks to the World Cup in Japan. Does that make him a bad dad? And I remember watching it, and again, maybe this was justification. It's probably rational justification. He's not a bad dad, is he, if he goes away in an England camp for 8 weeks representing his country, earning money and doing what he loves and what he's paid to do. And I started to think, well, what's the difference with me? I had a job at the time where I was based out of, I was running a digital agency. I was the FD of a digital agency in Stockholm. And they had offices all over the world. And it was my job to sit on the board, so I was going to, we had Milan, Dublin, Rome, Paris, all these different places. So I was away every week. And that's when it ate at me until the point I looked at somebody like Beckham and thought, well, he's not a bad dad because he's doing that. And then it started to dawn on me that it was this idea of being a role model to my kids rather than a transactional provider.
It's a great example because you can straight away have already thought of what happened to a guy, for example, I never had my daughter when I was in the military, but what happens if you go to Afghanistan for 6 months?
There you go.
You suddenly become a bad dad.
If you're on the oil rigs, are you a bad dad?
Yeah.
If you're doing everything that you can to provide for your kids, you can't be a bad dad. Surely. What I would say is, so that was the early one. The other thing about work-life balance is, there's two more things. Is one, where's your headspace when you're with your kids? The other one is, I guess my biggest guilt nowadays is the stress and pressure that I'm under. How am I behaving around them?
If you're kind of ratty and stuff, if you're short-tempered,
And even me, I've just moved the goalposts, haven't I? So start by saying you're moving the goalposts. You've gone from there to there to there. And now I've gone, so I don't mind going away because it builds character. I don't mind working loads of long hours abroad because I'm providing for my kids and so on and so forth. But even then you try and find the next thing on the guilt ladder. So you go, but I'm a bit snappy. And is that going to affect my kids and their behaviour? And what do they think of dad? You know. So that's the one thing that I'm probably...
And it's so linked as well to your job, innit? Because you're trying to provide, a good lifestyle for them. So there are going to be more pressures. So you are going to be more likely to be more snappy.
Yeah. It's mental. And also, part of my job is I work with high-performing people. And so one of the things that I find really, really difficult, but we'll all find this difficult, is at what level do you encourage, motivate and inspire your kids? And at what point do you become a dad and just tell them off, or a mum, and just, you have to step in? And I think one thing I've definitely approached, and I was really worried about this, by the way, but I've got a 16, 8, 6 and 2. And I'm glad that I've got the 16-year-old. He's really your test bed. If you've got one kid, it really gives you the opportunity to try something, see if it works, and then test, and then
and I guess
don't
the youngest
do it on
one,
the other 3 kids. It'd be interesting how my youngest kid gets brought up compared to my eldest. I didn't even think about that before this conversation. But Ethan, if you like, has got the brunt of it because he's the test bed.
It'll be great when he watches this back.
I know, yeah, when he looks at this. But on another note, because I was worried about was I harsh, too harsh, because I can be coming back to that human performance bit. When you're around high performers, really, you have demands, and sometimes I have demands in my kids, and I think, is that the right level of demand? And I can be demanding as a.
What is the answer to that? Because you've kind of been in. I was 16. My little girl's 8. I know, the kids are successful at other parts. My little girl this week, I've pushed her. She does jiu-jitsu on a Monday. I've pushed her to go to acting class on a Tuesday. I've pushed her to do horse riding on a Wednesday. I've pushed her to do kickboxing on a Thursday. I'm pushing her to do a homework. I'm pushing her to do reading of a night. And then I think, at what point do you just go? So then I feel a bit, God, am I being a bit, like you say, being too harsh? Am I not being a dad enough? Am I trying to, so you've kind of at both ends of the scale with that.
You see, the only thing I can, the thing about why this appeals to everyone is there's no right and wrong, there's no manual.
Well, even just 2 minutes of this now, it's apparent that there's no right answer, is there?
No, but what I would say is, you use the word pushing, and you could look at that on one side of the fence. The other side of the fence could be, I give her the opportunity to go jiu-jitsu on the money. I give her opportunity to go to whatever the other things were, horse riding on a Tuesday or swimming on a Wednesday. Yeah. Actually, that's kind of credit to you. But even then, as parents, we can sometimes think, am I being pushy? With Ethan, I've always been, where I've got to struggle me to draw the line is effort. Right, so I'm not really bothered.
As in if he doesn't put effort in?
Yeah. So I could sit on the side and watch him play basketball, right? And I don't care if he hits 10 shots and misses 10. I care about his demeanour when he does it, his effort, what he thinks about his performance afterwards, and whether he's tried. And if he's tried and they've got beat, it doesn't really bother me. And I'm not that kind of pushy. I don't think, truthfully, I don't think anybody, unless they're performing at elite level, should be worried about the result.
No.
But I do think from almost any age, you should be worried about the level of effort your kids are putting in, even if they don't like what they're doing. Because in life, you have to put effort into, particularly more effort, into the things you don't like doing.
Yeah.
And if you let an 8-year-old or a 6-year-old think that they don't have to put effort in because they don't like it, where's that going to leave them when they're 18, 16 and 18, 26 and 28? What I do believe is, I've seen people where they're friends.
What, friends with the kids?
Friends with the kids, that's one strategy.
That's
and it's
another
each
thing.
to their own.
Yeah, that's another thing with potentially I always think a bit guilty over. Am I too friendly with her? And I say to her all the time, I say, Alba, you're my best friend. And she says, you're my best friend. And I think, but do I want that as she's getting older? And are you saying about your 8-year-old, you very rarely shout at him. I never shout at Alba.
Yeah.
And which is great. But then I think, is there going to be a time coming when I need to be a dad and not a friend?
I think if you've ever got this is just me, and it could be completely different for someone else. If you've ever got to pick a side between being a dad and being a friend, regardless of the outcome, I'd always be a dad first. Because I think that is your job. I think that is what we've signed up to do. So that means sometimes you're on the side of, right, so Ethan lives in St Helens, and and he comes over to ours every weekend. He's left school now, so it's slightly different. But as he was getting brought up, he was at a different school, and he's also the youngest in the school. So what that meant with him was that when you're a kid, you've got to kind of pick who you are. Are you the toughest? Are you the best at sport? Are you the best looking? Do you get all the boys? Do you get all the girls? You have all that kind of, you get your position, don't you? And Ethan's position was, all those have been taken. I'm the youngest, he's born on the 28th of August. I'm the youngest in the year, so in year 1, year 7, I'm the youngest in the school. Where do I fit? So he decided he was going to be the class clown. So his reports, year after year after year through school, year 7, year 8, year 9, I'm in school every month or every few months. And because it's a lack of effort, if my kid was getting in the bottom 2% of grades, I really wouldn't be that bothered, right? That wouldn't bother me. But they gave him an effort score, and he's in the bottom 2%, right? And that to me is red rag. So I am going all in. There's no other way of describing it. At the point of lack of effort, I'm going all in. And it gets to the final year of his exams, 5th year, and I just said, I've had enough. I've had enough of going to school. You know, you've got your exams in 3 months' time. You're bottom of the class. Your predicted grades, they've changed them all now. So where he was, say his predicted grades at the start of year 4 was like B's. They've gone to like E's and fails. I'm like, I'm done. Weirdly, I'd actually just lost the fight to keep telling him off. And weirdly, he changed immediately. And for the last 4 months, up until his exams, he just put so much hard work in and so much effort in off his own back. And there might be, some learnings in there for people, but off his own back, he was doing 9, 10, 12 hours a day revision all the way up to his exams. Anyway, long story short, we're in Spain, and he gets his results, and he gets B's and C's, right? So he'd gone from getting a B's and C's to predicted E's, F's and fails to all of a sudden he recovered it right at the last minute in the last 4 months. And he ended up weirdly getting better results than some of the people that had not put that effort in right at the end. And I looked at his smile on his face, and I swear for like 3 days, like when you pass your driving test and you're just like buzzing. He was like that for 3 days. And at that point, I felt vindicated in what I'd done, going into the school, telling him off, taking the school side 9 times out of 10.
Well, that's it. You've been a parent rather than a friend then.
And I tell you what, it used to kill me. I sometimes used to feel, I'd tell him off, and then when you don't live with him, you tell him off and you drop them off. That's a lot worse, right?
So you've not had to deal with that one, yeah?
Telling him off and giving it and then putting him to bed is easier.
Well, I guess that's the thing, if you're probably less likely. There'll be loads of parents who have got a similar situation than we had with ours, but it's like, if the kid's being naughty and you've got to give them back to the mum or the dad, whatever, do you really want to leave that last half an hour of you going, you need to put more effort in, So you might not, but that's because you're trying to be a friend rather than a dad.
I drove home either nearly in tears or in tears, thinking, wow. But
you knew you'd have to do it.
And we drove home from Spain. So I tried to do things with the kids, like one-on-one. I've got 4 kids, so I feel guilty about having 4 kids.
It's not getting the individual time.
Because when I had one kid who I didn't live with, we went to pitches every week. We went basketball every week. We went swimming every week till he could swim. We went on holiday together. And the other 3 don't get that.
So interesting, this,
Right, the other 3 don't get that, and that fills me with guilt. So I don't do anywhere near as much individually with the 8, 6 and 2-year-olds I did with a current 16-year-old, because I have to divide all my time. And I reckon everybody who's got more than one kid feels that guilt. Almost everybody. But and that's the thing again, isn't it, about coming back there? You're always trying to find, as a parent, as an adult, something that makes you feel inadequate as a parent.
The other thing you mentioned before, I just want to get you to expand on a bit. It's a little bit about, and I'm guessing it's more for people maybe in your, people who high pressure jobs, etc. Whereas when you do get that time, is it quality time? Are you able to switch off because there'll be people there who maybe will get guilt about they've had a stressful day, they've come home, you know, you've got to sort the tea out, you've got to do, you know, everything like that, and you just get an iPad and you just throw it in front of your kid and you go, right, I just need to sit down with a glass of wine, whatever it may be. I don't know. There'll be that goes on, and then subsequently from that, oh, fucking hell, I've left them for too long on the iPad. I've not spent any time with them. There'll be that guilt that goes on as well, because there's not quality time. Or even when you are actually speaking with them, you're thinking about work or you're thinking about your own personal life.
And that's non-stop. When we went to Iceland, you know, we talked on the first podcast that part of why we talked about goal setting was you'd come with me, and we took 24 people to Iceland to talk about setting different goals for the year. And we set 4 different goals. One was for ourselves, one was for work, one for career, one was for what we do with others, and one was obviously for family. My goal was to put my phone down for 4 hours on a Saturday and 4 hours on a Sunday. And that was 5 months ago. How many times do you reckon I've done that?
I think you said on one of the podcasts, it's almost as if you'd try, so you might have got the odd hour in, but whether it was consistently 4 hours, then that's another question.
I tell you what, it made me do setting the objective. It made me more aware, right? So I have not managed to give up drink for a month either, right? And I've not managed
But you're aware of it, though. I think that's a big thing. That's a big thing.
Do you know what? I think there's 2 sides to it. Awareness, the biggest, they're equal. Awareness and acceptance. If you're aware of something, I'm aware that I spend too much time on my phone. So I set a goal to not spend, to put it in a drawer for 4 hours on a Saturday, 4 hours on a Sunday. The fact of the matter is I've not achieved that goal, but I'm aware of it, I've set a goal. Now on a Saturday and Sunday, I certainly won't have the youngest who's 2 pulling at me while I'm scrolling through or sending an email. I'm aware what's going on. And so I will create and generate better behaviours.
But you've got to accept, though.
And I will accept that I can't actually, it's not always
completely
possible.
switch off.
It's not always possible.
For you to kind of you've got to accept that you cannot just give your phone up for 4 hours as well.
No.
Do you know what I mean? You maybe set that as initial intention. You've tried it, you know you can't. I've accepted I can't do that.
Yeah.
But I'm going to be aware that I'm maybe doing it a bit too much.
Yeah.
But you're accepting that I can't completely just...
Still better than it was, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And I'm aware it's better than what it was, and I accept that perhaps a goal is set. You should be able to hit that goal, I think. You know, but you know what? It might not be the right time either. You know, you get another time in your life where you've got more time, you've got less stress, you've got less hassle, you can spend even more time with the kids.
Do you know another thing which it's a topic on itself is social media. Probably the last kind of guilt, which I don't tend to get this one personally, but I'm imagining people at home might, is social media guilt. You know, you look at, you know, I don't know, Easter's coming up.
Yeah.
Oh God, so-and-so's going away for an Easter break. They got a week in Tenerife, whatever. Wow, God, I wish I could do that with my kids. I feel like such a bad parent. Comparing yourself on social media, Christmas time, you know, mums and dads posting how many presents they've got under the tree. God, I have not got that many presents, you know.
Yeah.
I think that could be a thing that I get a lot of people down, feeling guilty, comparing yourself.
I mean, we should do a podcast on that.
That's going to be one, definitely one topic.
On its own, but I think I tell you what I get guilt over. So it's so weird, this conversation, because I barely post my kids. I don't feel like I've got the need to say, my kid's beautiful, or my kid's the best thing in the world. Or So if they're doing stuff, that's different. But then I think, oh no, Andy's posting, Andy's with Alba, and they've been to swimming and horse riding and jiu-jitsu, and you think, I haven't. So you can, the mad part about this conversation is, and I reckon it'd be dead interesting for people who are listening to just write in and just tell us like what your guilts are, because I reckon it would fill. I'm going to think about this. Next time I'm posting a photo, I'll put shit. I can't. Paula feels shit now about this. Because it does. Yeah, it just does. Because I do think as parents, really, it's the ultimate, right? Being a good parent is probably the ultimate accolade of humanity, isn't it? In a million years, Andy, I wouldn't swap anything I've got. And they go, but he's a crap dad. You know, I'm not saying I'm the greatest dad in the world, but I try. And I wouldn't, there's no way, for $1 billion, you wouldn't give me £1 billion, and I bet you there's most people listening today, even if they can't pay the energy bills next month, right, would not take £1 million to be recognised as a bad parent.
No. 100%.
There wouldn't be many.
No.
I reckon it's probably the real test of, or the real reflection of who you are as a human being.
And it's probably the hardest job in the world.
Which is why you overthink it, overanalyze it, beat yourself up about it, and get probably more guilty about your performance as a parent than you should.
To wrap things up, getting to that half an hour mark, what is the answer then? I mean, for me, I'd say talking, because I had these guilts coming into this conversation, and without making you feel bad, but knowing you've got similar guilt, I feel a bit better about myself. I'd say probably for me, that's knowing that other people are probably feeling just as bad as your feelings probably is helpful, weirdly. That's got to be one of them.
I reckon awareness and acceptance. And probably awareness that you're going to overthink, because you just listen to us two, and some will be going...
And that'll be interesting, because people probably look at, especially more me, because I post more about my kids than you, but wow, great dads, successful fellas, great dads, wow. They mustn't feel guilty about anything. They just listen to me and you for half an hour and go, fucking hell.
Yeah.
I'm not posted enough on me.
Because everything you're guilty about, I'm not. But everything you're not guilty about, I am. So I think that awareness of the situation is the most important thing. Probably sharing it. As I say, if you want to share the comments in,
no, it would be interesting to get people sharing.
The amount of repetition of what people are guilty about, I bet would be incredible.
And acceptance to know that there is no perfect mum, there is no perfect dad. It's impossible.
It's impossible.
Enjoyed this. Probably might be my favourite one, to be honest. Yeah. No, hope you enjoyed it too. Big thanks again for all the feedback we've had from the first 3 shows. From doing podcasts over the years, it's probably these shows and these kind of real honest conversations. I've had so many deep kind of meaningful messages about them. So they are hitting the mark, they are resonating with people, which we wanted them to do. So thanks for the support. Keep liking them, sharing them, and most importantly, getting in touch with us. We want to know things we should speak about, and let us know how you kind of feel about things as well. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.